Out of all the Bond films, Casino Royale stands out amongst a personal favorite, and for a specific reason: its approach to modern masculinity as portrayed by Bond. It's the first Bond to not only showcase his strengths, but more importantly, for the sake of this analysis, his weaknesses. This Bond isn't what we've come to expect from its predecessors. That suave, emotionally detached ladies' man. Of course, there's some of that in this film, but instead, for the first time in the franchise, we see a Bond that is raw, emotionally vulnerable, and more poignant, deeply human. When analyzing the film through a Jungian lens, we see a Bond that embodies various archetypal processes, from the hero's journey to the warrior's discipline, lover's vulnerability, and even the shadow's repression. By the end of the film, Bond's transformation reflects many of the emotional and existential challenges that men face today. Nevertheless, we can take away key lessons from the film that will help men better navigate this problematic time. Let's start with Bond's hero journey, or his initiation into manhood. At the beginning of the film, Bond hasn't fully reached 00 status. Though he completes his first mission, it's sloppy and reckless, but we get a first glimpse of his raw potential. The kills he makes aren't just career goals for Bond. They symbolize a psychological rite of passage into manhood, and with it, power and responsibility. The kills are also Bond's first encounter with his shadow, or the dark, ruthless side of his psyche. But how does this parallel with the real world and the struggles of young men today? Well, obviously, none of us men are out here trying to emulate the work James Bond does, but it does point out the lack of male rites of passage. Without initiations into manhood or adulthood, men are at risk for drifting into a sort of extended adolescence, well into our older adult years. Bond's initiation is a reflection of the modern-day need for self-imposed challenges to build resilience. For men specifically, it's coming to the realization that manhood isn't bestowed upon, but rather earned. Without the necessary challenges, struggles, failures, and responsibilities, we men fail to develop the ability to effectively navigate the world. In the beginning, we see that Bond lacks discipline and is easily prone to impulsivity. His lack of emotional intelligence and sole belief that brute force alone will lead to success are clear signs of weakness. In the age of hustle culture and red pill spaces, where men have been taught that boldness alone equals strength, and often just focusing on status, material wealth, and sex, we have done away with the critical components of emotional intelligence and humility as markers for human wholeness. This has been my issue with current male self-help movements, this lack of inner mastery. And of course, this isn't to say that surface-level mastery isn't important as well. But it's only a small part of the wholeness equation. Simply put, the male movement has an overcorrection on being quote-unquote alpha, but untempered confidence or crude boldness will undoubtedly lead to avoidable mistakes. True healthy masculine power is a fine balance of patience, control, discipline, and strength. Bond's journey is riddled with mental and emotional trials throughout the film. But one of the most defining moments is the poker game with Le Chiffre. This tense poker game, when you look at it more closely, is a metaphor for life. In this instance, Bond must shift his approach from a brute force mindset to a psychologically strategic mindset. In order to succeed, Bond has to think ahead, control his emotions, and read his opponent's intentions. Obviously, this is easier said than done, as Bond initially loses to Le Chiffre, lashing out emotionally and nearly quitting. Soon after, Bond is poisoned. In the bathroom scene, he's quickly losing control. His inability to shake off the poison is his shadow manifesting physically. Ultimately, we know Bond comes out alive and outplays the Sharif in the end. But emotional control will be one of the hardest endeavors many men will face in their lives. Every man at some point in their life will confront his own mortality and weaknesses. But ignoring the shadow will only lead to self-destruction. Learning to integrate the shadow will lead to wisdom and resilience. Emotional mastery is the result of learning to delay instant gratification and navigating human dynamics with patience, composure, and foresight. The infamous torture scene between the Sharif and Bond is a symbolic representation of the classic hero's journey abyss moment. This is where Bond, or the hero, is tested to the edge of death. In Jungian terms, it's Bond's ego death, the moment where his masculine invincibility is broken. We see Bond being brutally tortured while fully nude, but symbolically, this humiliating torture signifies complete vulnerability for Bond, and an experience that he is completely unfamiliar with, given his controlled and dominant demeanor. Another problem I'm seeing with male movements today is the avoidance of being vulnerable. To be fair, this has been the plight of masculinity forever. It's nothing new. This idea that men must be invulnerable to anything and everything at all times is a wildly dangerous misconception. And I'm not saying it's okay for us men to just go about crying and complaining about everything. That's not what being vulnerable means. It's more so about not pretending that we never suffer or are in pain. We're human after all. While we won't be facing physical tortures, we all face high-stress situations. The question is, will we fold under the pressure, or will we have the emotional and psychological fortitude to get through? Simply put, it's about enduring pain without breaking, to the best of our abilities. True strength isn't about avoiding pain, it's about facing it head-on, enduring, and learning from it. That's where real growth is built. For the first time in the Bond franchise, we also see Bond in an intimate relationship, another symbolic representation of his transformation. Vesper is an opportunity for Bond to integrate his anima, or feminine side, into his personality. Unlike his other flings, Vesper embodies traits that Bond lacks: the depth, intelligence, and emotional grounding. Bond is experiencing, in Jungian terms, what is known as the lover archetype. By opening himself up to love, trust, and emotional depth, Bond puts himself on the trajectory towards true individuation. Symbolically, the love he develops for Vesper is the ultimate ego dissolution. True love requires full surrender and vulnerability, which for many of us men is seemingly impossible. But why? Well, because we've been culturally taught that emotional connection is weakness. In reality, the men that are fully comfortable with their emotions and relationships are far stronger than the ones who avoid them. True masculinity isn't about avoiding love, but rather embracing it without losing oneself. Unfortunately, Bond's love doesn't pan out the way it should. He's betrayed by Vesper. She serves as Bond's anima projection. He projects an ideal onto her, more specifically, an emotional salvation. But she is not to be seen as his missing piece. Just like anyone else, Vesper is a flawed human with her own downfalls. But rather than learning from the pain of betrayal, his hope is completely shattered, and he only retreats farther inward, completely closing himself off from further emotional connection or vulnerability. And I don't blame Bond. It's a natural response to a deep and traumatic event that we've all experienced, men and women, at some point in our life. But an inability to integrate the shadow and anima is Bond's failure to overcome his hero's journey. This situation and reaction has become the standard textbook experience of many, many men. What do many of us do when we experience heartbreak? We retreat. We become bitter, we detach, and we seek ideologies that don't serve our greater purpose. We believe all women are snakes and can't be trusted. But we should take more accountability for our own suffering. We fail in idolizing women as our saviors. We consistently make the mistake of seeking relationships that will fill our emotional voids. And when this illusion is broken, we let it break us. Bond's response of, "the bitch is dead," is his form of emotional shutdown, and the type of response many men adopt today. It's no surprise many of us can't hold an intimate long-term relationship. We have used our past suffering or heartbreak as the sole excuse for opting for a life of casual encounters, detachment, and avoidance of any real intimacy. We have forgotten that pain is a teacher and not a prison. Experiencing pain without becoming a complete nihilist is the goal. I can't think of anything more quote-unquote masculine than going through hardships time after time and still having the courage to love again. I empathize with the male struggle. We are living in a time where no one knows what it means to be masculine. In the past, we had more clearly defined roles of masculinity. Modern men are fully disconnected from these traditional rites of passage. It's no wonder we feel lost and have retreated to forms of external validation and emotional repression. It's become glorified at this point. Bond's cold detachment is both admired and tragic. While we idolize his stoicism, we fail in seeing how his inability to process pain makes him deeply flawed. In the end, Bond in Casino Royale is both an ideal and a warning. True masculinity, while it embodies discipline, control, and strength, is not about rejecting emotion, but rather mastering it.